Sukrid Petpradittha from the Durham University, and he will talk about optimal Lieb-Thirring type inequalities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for the nice workshop. It's my pleasure to be here. Today I would like to talk about the research which is based on joint work with Spina Bogley, who's sitting over there. My talk is basically part of the current paper that Sabina and I have put it on archive. So if there's something unclear to you during my talk, no worries, you can find some more details on the archive. I would like to begin with the assumptions that I'm going to assume for the whole talk. When you see D here, it basically means dimensions, and I will assume that P depends on the dimensions D as follows. When we are in the dimension 1, P is bigger than or equal to 1. If we are in 2 dimensions, P bigger than 1. And if we are in 3 or higher dimensions, P is at least half of D. I will call these conditions LT condition because it's relatively associated to Lieb-Thirring inequalities. When you see V here, it means a function from the LP space, and I will use the notation HV here to represent my Schrödinger operator with potential V acting in the Hilbert space, L2 space. I would like to recall some basic properties of the Schrödinger operators. The Schrödinger operator is self-adjoint if our potential is real value, and the Laplacian here has the essential spectrum coincides with the set of all non-negative real numbers. And below you will see the definition of the essential spectrum for a linear operator, which is basically defined by the set of all lambda such that there exists a singular sequence associated to lambda. And when P is satisfying the LT condition above, we can show that by perturbation theory, our essential spectrum of the Schrödinger operator is unchanged, meaning that it's still equal to the non-negative real line. And we define the discrete spectrum of the Schrödinger operator by you take a spectrum of it and then you exclude the essential spectrum. As my main research interest is all about Lieb-Thirring inequalities, I would like to begin with the original version of Lieb-Thirring inequalities for real potentials, where Lieb-Thirring showed that if you sum over the discrete eigenvalues of the Schrödinger operator with the exponent P minus D over 2 here, you can bound the summation on the left-hand side by the LP norm of the potential. And to the community of non-self-adjointness, it's quite natural to ask whether this inequality is still true or not when we allow the potential to be like complex value instead of real value. And if you listen to Sabina's talk yesterday, you would probably know the answer that in general it's not true. And these are some selected references regarding non-self-adjoint LT inequalities. I would like to talk about it a little bit. The first 2 papers can be used to show that the natural extension of the LT inequality can be true, while the third paper concerns, it basically says that the above inequality is true, but then you have to exclude all eigenvalues inside a cone around the positive real axis, which means you cannot cover all of discrete eigenvalues. The fourth paper is basically a generalization of the third paper. They extend the result to the general setting non-self-adjoint operator. And the last paper, you can have discrete eigenvalue estimate for the whole plane, but then the form on the left-hand side has to be changed. I'm not going to go in details. The generalized LT inequality that I would like to talk about today is the one derived by Sabina in 2023. The assumptions, if we write down P in terms of D over 2 plus gamma, and then we assume that gamma is bigger than or equal to 1. Now we fix a function f continuous on increasing. The statement specifically says that if the integral is finite, then you can the summation over all discrete eigenvalue of my Schrödinger operator of the form that is 10 to the p divided by the absolute value of lambda to the d over 2 multiplied by a weight function here can be controlled by the integral of v. And in one dimension, Sabina proved that this integrability condition is optimal in the sense that it's unremovable. If the integral is infinity, then this can't be true. It's quite natural to expect a similar phenomenon in high dimensions. And therefore, the idea of the proof is if you move the LP norm of the potential to the left-hand side, and then you take the supremum over all non-zero potentials, then it can't be bounded. This is the idea. Therefore, I would like to define my notation ratio Vf in terms of you take the summation on the left-hand side and then you divide it by the norm of the potential. This is what I just previously said. This is our papers. We would like to show that in high dimensions, this condition here is unremovable. Therefore, we need to apply the idea of eigenvalue construction from our previous paper, which was published last year. This result is by Sabina, myself, and František from Prague. The idea is we take the potential of the form Vh is equal to Ih times the characteristic function of the open unit ball. And then we modify some certain indexes, where these indexes can be used to determine the asymptotic behavior of the real and imaginary part of my eigenvalues. And then we can show that when H is sufficiently large, we obtain finally many numerous eigenvalues in the first quadrant of the complex plane. Therefore, we use the eigenvalue construction and plug it in our inequality. And therefore, I can show you the statement of my theorem, of our theorem. Okay, here are the assumptions. Because we are now in high dimensions, so these bigger than or equal to 2, and then we take a parameter epsilon between 0 and 1. We assume the LT inequality, with the LT condition according to the dimensions, and then we fix a function f continuous decreasing. And then we assume that the integral f is infinity. Now we can show that the ratio of our specific choice of potential with a function f can be bounded from below by something proportional to the integral of f along the non-negative real line joining the point 0 to epsilon log h. And this proof can be done by a contradiction method. Now, if we are interested in the class of non-decreasing functions, and if we narrow it down from the class of non-increasing functions down to those with some additional information, for example, if we assume that we take f non-decreasing function with the monotonicity condition on f of log t square over t, then we can show like a bigger lower bound of our ratio with a specific choice of potential, meaning that we can show that the ratio has a lower bound proportional to the integral of f along the non-negative real line joining these 2 points, epsilon over 2 log h to epsilon log h. And we can prove it by contradiction as well. Actually, this assumption is not necessary to be assumed because we are now in the decreasing function and our function is positive, it's typo. Okay, I would really like to end my conversation by giving you a couple of examples where if you have a look at our divergence estimate again from the previous theorem, I would like to give you a couple of examples where if f is the exponential function like e to the psi t, where psi is positive, And then we do some calculation, expand out the ratio, see what it means. You can see that we obtain a lower bar proportional to so-called like polynomials, like h to the epsilon psi. And then if f is identically 1, we do again expand out the ratio, and then you can see that we obtain a lower bar proportional to the log h. I would like to mention that the last divergence estimate is an improvement of our previous paper, in a sense that in the previous paper we can show that this guy on the left-hand side has a lower bar proportional to log h to some power between 0 and 1. We can't touch 1, but here we can. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sukrid. So we have a couple of minutes for questions. Any questions for Sukrid?
Yeah. So in your example, is it important that the potential is purely imaginary? So it's like least self-adjoint possible.
What do you mean by least self-adjoint?
If it was real, it would be self-adjoint.
Yes, it's
and then Lieb-Thirring is true.
Yes.
So, is it if you had something which was like had a real part and imaginary part, can you get something as bad as you have, or it's like the worst case scenario?
Yes, as you said, because we know that if the potential, if it's real value, then the Lieb-Thirring inequality is true. So we need to somehow make it complex value function. And therefore, this is the example that modified from like the paper by Sabina with Francis Jake, where the kind of construction, the potential of the form in one dimension, they construct the potential of the form IH times the characteristic function over the closed interval minus 1, 1. Now, in order to generalize this idea, it's quite natural to look at that example, but then for high dimensions, instead of the closed interval minus 1, 1, we need to do the characteristic equation of the open unit ball instead, and we try to solve eigenvalue equation from that. But the hardest part would be like solving the eigenvalue equation, because in higher dimensions you need to deal with equations such that the left and the right hand side are Basel functions. So you need to invent something like properties, like new properties of Basel functions.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Sukrid? If not, let's thank him again.